It was New Year's Eve, a night that was supposed to be filled with excitement and celebration, but instead it became one of the most humiliating moments of my life. My mother-in-law Elizabeth had invited all of her friends over to our house for the party, and from the moment she walked through the door I knew things were going to go horribly wrong. The house was buzzing with chatter and laughter as I darted from one side of the room to the other, making sure everything was in place. Final touches on the decorations, platters of food neatly arranged, the drinks prepared. It had been David's idea to host the party at our house, and though I wasn't exactly thrilled by the thought of entertaining a crowd, I wanted everything to go smoothly. I wanted to make him proud of me. This was our home, and I wanted it to reflect that. When Elizabeth arrived, however, it was as though the room itself shifted. She stepped through the door with all the grace of a queen, her sharp heels clicking against the hardwood floor, demanding attention the way only she could. She made no effort to blend in, no attempt to fit with the others. She was the party. Her red dress clung tightly to her figure, and her flashy rhinestone jewelry sparkled with every movement, catching the light like it was begging to be noticed. But it wasn't just her appearance that struck me, it was her attitude, that air of superiority that made me feel small and insignificant. Without even so much as a hello, she scanned the room, her eyes narrowing in on the decorations I had painstakingly put together. She wrinkled her nose and made a loud, exaggerated sound of disapproval. "This is your idea of a party?" she asked, her voice cutting through the hum of conversation. "Looks like a child did this." My stomach sank. I felt the blood rush to my face, my smile stiffening as I forced myself to stay calm. "I did my best to make it nice," I said, but the words felt like they were slipping out of my mouth in slow motion. It was as if every part of me was screaming to stop, to tell her off, but I kept my composure for now. She wasn't done though. "Oh, honey," she said in a mocking tone, "your best effort is, well, let's just say it's unique." The fake laugh that followed made everyone in the room pause, and before I knew it, her friends joined in laughing, as if I wasn't even standing there. It felt like a punch to the gut. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the crunch of snacks, it was all so loud. I told myself to hold it together. It was just one night. I'd been through worse. But then she kept going. She commented on everything, the way I looked in my dress, the food I had spent hours planning, and cooking, the music I had carefully chosen to set the perfect mood. Each comment felt like a little blade digging deeper, and I wanted to snap. I really did, but I stayed quiet. I was too tired of the fight. Then she crossed a line in the middle of the room with everyone watching. She pointed at me and let out that horrible laugh of hers. "Why don't you move to the shed?" she sneered, her voice loud and cruel. "That's all you're good for." The room went dead silent for a split second before her friends burst into laughter. It was deafening, the kind of laughter that cuts through you like a knife. I froze, my breath caught in my chest as the weight of what had just happened sank, and I looked at David, hoping for even the smallest sign that he would stand up for me. But no, he was standing there staring blankly at the floor, his face devoid of any emotion. It was worse than the insults. The disappointment in his eyes crushed me in a way I wasn't prepared for. I could feel the sting of tears threatening to fall, and I knew I couldn't stand there any longer. Without a word, I turned on my heels and fled from the room, my heart pounding in my ears. I locked myself in the bedroom, my body trembling as I curled up on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I tried to calm my racing thoughts, to steady my breath, but all I could feel was the raw anger bubbling inside me. I was angry at her, yes, but I was angrier at myself, angry for letting it get this far, angry for allowing myself to be treated this way, even after all these years of trying to keep the peace. But more than anything, I was angry because I couldn't understand how my husband, the man I had loved and built a life with, could stand there and say nothing. And so there I was in the silence of the bedroom, feeling more alone than I ever had before. That night, as the clock struck midnight and the guests raised their glasses in cheers, something inside me snapped. The sound of clinking glasses and laughter filled the air, but I couldn't shake the feeling of anger and humiliation that had been building inside me all night for years. I had endured Elizabeth's cruelty silently, hoping she would change, praying that my husband David would protect me, but this moment, the laughter, the cruel words, the sting of her mockery was the final straw. I realized in that instant that I couldn't keep living this way. I would no longer tolerate being belittled or treated like I didn't matter. This wasn't just about a single night or one incident. It was about reclaiming myself as the new year began. So did a new chapter of my life. I made a promise to myself when the sun rose. Everything would change the next morning. The house was unervingly quiet. The remnants of the party were scattered everywhere, half-drunk glasses left over, plates of food, streamers hanging from the ceiling like wilted flowers. David was still asleep, unaware of the storm raging inside me. I stood in the kitchen, sipping my coffee, letting the bitterness of the brew ground me as I replayed her words in my mind. The shed, my grip tightened around the mug, and a surge of determination rose within me. Enough was enough. I needed to take action. I grabbed my phone, my fingers shaking slightly as I opened the real estate app. For months, I had kept a realtor's business card tucked away just out of curiosity, but today I was ready to use it. Today I would make a change. Hello, this is Madison from Keller and Williams. Really? A cheerful voice answered on the other end. Hi, Madison, I said, trying to sound confident despite the knot in my stomach. This is Diana. I want to sell my house fast. There was a slight pause on the other end, and then Madison's voice returned. Hit like on this video. Warm and professional, of course. Can you tell me a little about the property? I glanced around the house, taking in the familiar surroundings. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, spacious enough to feel like home, but too full of memories, both good and bad. This house had always been mine. I had inherited it from my parents, and when David and I married, it was already in my name. There had never been a question about ownership, and now as I looked around, I realized I was ready to part with it. This wasn't just about selling a house. This was about reclaiming the part of myself that had been lost over the years. I wasn't going to let anyone, not Elizabeth, not David, have any more power over my life. It's in Brookfield, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. The house is in good condition, and it's fully furnished, I said, my voice steady, the words flowing more easily than I expected. That sounds like a great property, Madison replied. If you need to sell quickly, I can come by today to take a look. That would be perfect, I answered, my voice trembling slightly with a mix of excitement and fear. This was happening. I was really doing it. By noon, Madison arrived. I showed her around the house, pointing out its features without delving into the emotions tied to each room. She nodded as she took notes, moving through the house with a professional eye. This place is in great shape, she said, smiling. I can list it right away. Way with the current market, you could have an offer in a week or even sooner. That's exactly what I need, I said, my pulse quickening. This was it, the first step toward freedom. After Madison left, I stood at the front door, staring out at the quiet street. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of control. I was moving forward, making a decision for myself, and nothing, no one was going to take that away from me. Later that evening, I sat David down, his face twisted in shock, his eyes wide with panic. You're selling the house, he demanded, his voice rising. Are you crazy? Where are we supposed to live? I don't know, and honestly, I don't care, I replied firmly. This house is in my name. I'm tired of being treated like a doormat, and I'm done with your mother's insults. But this is our home, he protested, his voice tinged with desperation. My family comes here all the time. That's exactly the problem, I said, my voice unwavering. This is my house, and I won't let your mother use it to humiliate me anymore. For the first time, he was speechless. He stood there, his mouth open, but no words coming out. I didn't need to hear anything else. I walked away, knowing I had made the first step towards something better for myself. Madison kept her word. By the end of the week, there was a cash offer on the table. The buyer was eager to close quickly, and I signed the papers without a second thought. The process was fast, almost surreal, but as I finalized everything, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for so long finally lifted. I had taken control, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally living life on my terms. On moving day, I didn't give David or Elizabeth, a heads up. I waited until the movers had loaded the last box into the truck, and the house was nearly empty as I stood in the bare living room. The walls that had once felt like home now felt cold and distant. I took a deep breath and left a simple note on the kitchen counter. The house is sold. Good luck. It was brief, direct, and exactly what I needed to say. No more explanations, no more justifications. I was done. The fallout came swiftly, and it was ugly. David started calling over and over, leaving voicemails that read as desperate pleas, then escalated into anger and confusion. He couldn't understand why I'd done it, why I had made such a drastic decision. Elizabeth wasn't far behind, screaming down the phone line, accusing me of ruining everything, demanding that I fix it. But I didn't give, and I didn't respond to their messages or their calls. I had already moved into a small, quiet apartment across town. It wasn't as spacious as the house, but it was mine, completely mine, and it felt like the first real step I'd taken toward regaining control of my life. A few days later, things took an even more bizarre turn. The new owners of the house called the police after Elizabeth tried to force her way inside. She was convinced the house was still hers, and she demanded they let her in, claiming the sale was somehow illegal and accusing them of stealing from her. She ended up looking utterly ridiculous, embarrassed, and rejected. The police had to escort her off the property. After that, she seemed to give up on trying to get in, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe freely, free from her judgment, free from her constant criticisms. No more passive-aggressive comments, no more calculated looks. I could finally start living for myself. I began doing things I hadn't in years, things I'd once enjoyed but had long neglected. I signed up for an art class, rediscovered old hobbies, and even took time to read books for pleasure. The pain from her betrayal didn't vanish overnight, but it grew easier to bear. Selling the house wasn't just about leaving behind a place. It was about reclaiming my life, my space, and my sense of dignity. I had taken control, and that felt empowering. One afternoon, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset as the sky melted into shades of orange and pink. A contented smile spread across my face. I had done it. They had tried to break me, but I had risen above it. For the first time in a long time, there was peace, no insults, no guilt, just pure freedom. I allowed myself to revel in the quiet joy of it. But of course, life wasn't finished with me yet. One morning, as I sipped my coffee and enjoyed the rare quiet of my apartment, my phone buzzed. It was Madison, my real estate agent. Her voice was bright as usual, but there was a tension in it that made my stomach dry drop. Hello, Diana. I don't want to bother you, but something strange has come up, she said, her tone a bit off. What is it? I asked, already sensing something wasn't right. Madison sighed, frustration clear in her voice. The buyers of your house just contacted me. Someone is trying to claim the property. My heart skipped a beat. Who? I asked, a chill creeping up my spine. It's your mother-in-law, she said, the words almost making me laugh out loud. She's claiming the house was hers, and she's insisting the sale wasn't legal. I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. That's absurd. The house was in my name. She has no claim to it. I know, Madison replied, her voice tinged with exasperation. The new owners have all the proper documentation, and they've already filed a report against her. But I thought you should know. I shook my head in disbelief. It didn't surprise me at all. Elizabeth's sense of entitlement had always been boundless. She was nothing if not relentless in her pursuit of control. I couldn't help but feel a mixture of anger and amusement. As desperate as she was no match for the truth. I hung up with a deep breath, letting the situation sink in. Of course, Elizabeth would try something like this. She had to be the center of attention, even at the expense of logic and legality. But this time she was out of options. I was done being her punching bag. The more she pushed, the more she subscribed for more revenge stories, revealed her true character. And this time I wouldn't let her drag me back into her web of manipulation and lies. No matter how hard she tried, I was free, and I wasn't going back. A few days later, I returned from my art class feeling more grounded than I had in ages. As I approached the building, I noticed a figure sitting on the bench outside. At First glance, she looked smaller, weaker. Then I remembered, but there was something in her posture, something sharp, that made me stop in my tracks. As I got closer, I could see it clearly, the same calculating eyes, the same tense expression. It was Elizabeth. The first squared my shoulders, refusing to show any sign of surprise. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My voice steady, calm, though inside I was a whirlwind of emotions. She stood slowly, clutching her purse like a lifeline, her face an unreadable mask of guilt and desperation. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice shaking with an uncharacteristic tremor. "I don't think we have anything to talk about," I replied, moving toward the door, trying to keep my composure. My heart raced, but I didn't let her see it. "Wait," she called, her voice cracking, and something about the desperation in her tone made me pause. "Please, Diana." "I'm sorry." The words felt foreign coming from her mouth. Elizabeth had never been one to apologize. I stopped, torn between disbelief and curiosity. Could she actually mean it, or was this just another manipulation? "Sorry." "Why?" I asked, turning to face her, my voice as cold as I could manage. I wasn't about to let her off the hook that easily for everything, she said, her eyes welling up with tears. "For how I treated you, for what I said at the party. I was wrong." Her face twisted in regret, and for a brief moment I almost believed her. But then the truth hit me. I knew better than to fall for this act. I crossed my arms, watching her closely. "And now you want something, right?" Her face tightened, and she couldn't meet my gaze. She nodded, her lips trembling. "The new owners are suing me. They want me to pay damages, and I don't have the money. I thought maybe you could help me." Her voice faltered with fear, and I could see how desperate she had become, but all I felt was disgust. I stared at her in disbelief. "You insulted me. You belittled me. You treated me like I was nothing, and now you think I'll help you. Do you even hear yourself? It's absurd." Her face crumpled, and she broke into tears, but I felt nothing, not even a flicker of sympathy. "I have nothing left. Not even your husband talks to me anymore. Please, Diana, I'll do anything," she sobbed. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to earn her approval, cooking meals for her, hosting her in my home, enduring her cruel comments and veiled insults. I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made just to keep the peace, to keep the family together. "I'm not going to help you," I said, my voice firm, unwavering. "This is all on you." She tried to speak, but I cut her off. "I spent years trying to gain your respect. I bent over backwards for you, opened my home to you, and all you did was tear me down. I owe you nothing." Her face twisted into a mask of fury, and her tears turned into rage. "You'll regret this," she hissed, her voice full of venom. "Goodbye," I said, calmly, turning away without a second glance. I wasn't about to let her have the satisfaction of seeing me falter. As I walked into my building, I could feel the tension draining from my body. The encounter had left me shaken, but it had also given me strength. For the first time I had stood up for myself, refused to let her control me one more time. That was my victory. A few weeks later, I got an email from Madison. The new owners had won their case, and Elizabeth was now legally required to pay damages. Even better, she was under investigation for the false claim she'd made. It was the final nail in the coffin, the closure I'd been waiting for. As for me, I continued to pour my energy into my art. My classes turned into a true passion, and I began selling my paintings online, something I never imagined I'd have the courage to do. The walls of my apartment filled with vibrant colors, each brushstroke a reflection of the new life I was building for myself, one that was finally free of the toxicity I'd left behind. Every painting was a step forward, a step away from the past, and it felt like the most liberating thing I had ever done. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, like the video and subscribe to our channel. This is the Twist Vault, where justice always finds its way. See you next time.